Taranaki is a region with more streams and more rainfall than many areas in New Zealand. It's also intensively farmed. 10 years before the Clean Streams Accord was introduced, the Regional Council and farmers began keeping stock out of waterways using fencing and riparian plantings. Rob Phillips, Director of Operations at Taranaki Regional Council, explains.
We've got a huge number of streams and rivers here. There's about 13,000 k's of them. We had targeted catchments and doing modest amounts and limited staff resources. It was very well suited to fitting in with the Accord, and we're quite unique in Taranaki around having planting targets as well as fencing targets. We've got pretty good water quality here in Taranaki. We've got short streams, they get flushed out pretty well. Our macro-invertebrate community, our biological community if you like, which is the indicator of stream health, is pretty good. The Clean Streams Accord came in about 2003. We put in place here in Taranaki our regional action plan, which sort of implemented the Accord targets but on a regional basis. They cover the normal things in other areas such as fencing, stock crossings, effluent consents, and also fencing off our wetlands. So, but as well as that, there was some targets around planting. And they were pretty ambitious targets. 50% of our streams planted by 2010 and 90% by 2015. We've achieved the targets, all of the targets, including the fencing and planting by 2010. And what plantings are you looking at for next year? What are you?
We've probably got.
Yeah, about to over the red line.
Yes,
first culvert.
Yes, so we've got to continue on down past that culvert there.
Rob believes progress has been so successful because the approach has been collaborative and non-regulatory, with an emphasis on building good relationships with individual farmers.
Then we'll have to replant through there as well.
Control, isn't it?
Yes.
The Regional Council role is to work with farmers preparing plans, and it's the farmer's role to implement those plans to fence and plant.
Yeah.
We've prepared over 2,300 riparian plans, so it's been a huge job, and now our officers are working closely one-to-one on assisting implementation, advising on species, just seeing how they're going, encouraging, prodding, and just working generally with them. We work closely with Fonterra. In fact, one of our little initiatives is a prize draw, and Fonterra is one of the sponsors of that, along with a fertiliser company here in Taranaki. So we also work with them on just sort of raising awareness programs, marketing programs. They're one of our key partners in this.
One of the barriers to planting was the cost of plants, and the council found a way to help.
We run a bulk tender system. We tender for these plants. This year we tender for 300,000. So that tender is done back sort of early in the spring, and these plants are grown on contract right through sort of central North Island. We're getting that economies of size and scale, and able to supply them for about an average of $2.50 a plant, which is quite a significant saving if they had to go and buy them from a nursery. We think it's best to point to farmers who are doing it well, and if any farmers have got any queries or suggestions, the Armstrongs is certainly out there as an excellent example of how to do it and how to go about planting and also looking after them as well.
Since the Regional Council have come on board, they've learnt considerably as we have, and I guess we've come to rely on them, certainly over the first 5 years in particular, in terms of the advice they've given, the encouragement they've given. I think that's been absolutely tremendous, because at times we've got a pretty big area to plant. You get a bit down about it, you just see what you've got to do ahead of you, and they've come in and been enthusiastic, reminded us of what we've done and been quite encouraging. The effective area that we're looking at the moment is 320 hectares. We're milking just over 1,000 cows. Adjacent to this, joined on, we have a dry stock block of, working on that I guess, around about 220 hectares. And then another dairy farm a little further down the road, another 80 hectares. Around about 17, 18 years ago, we purchased a neighbouring property. And at that stage, we inherited, I guess, a property that we really needed to re-race the majority of it. Quite a considerable part of it was alongside a river, a main race running alongside the river. And so we fenced that off at that stage and started planting through that area. This area is known for a lot of weeds, in particular this farm for gorse. And so it was a way of, one, keeping the stock away from the river, a management situation, and also building a canopy cover that would keep the weeds down. Planting and fencing really aren't the issues. It's releasing at the appropriate times. That first year in particular is absolutely critical, that you get the plants released to allow them to get their heads above the weeds that quickly come around them. you've got to really pick the right times to do it, and they are busy times for us on the farm over the spring. Wood pigeons we've seen recently in this area, which we have never ever seen before. So we're getting the corridors from the mountain to the sea. We're getting a number of different bird species in that we haven't seen before. And that certainly is, well, I guess to us actually quite exciting to see these animals or these birds coming in. And it's good, it certainly is a sense of satisfaction.
We planted this 5 years ago with the help of the primary school children from Taranaki. We were wanting to get it done in a fairly short space of time, and they were raising funds for a school trip, so we had 60 plus children arrive here one morning. We brought the TRC in as well, and the TRC gave them a talk about what they were doing and why. Narrow area, used a lot of toi, and you can see they work really well. You only have to look after them maybe for the first year, and they're really away. Flax works well, but if it's too narrow area, they interfere with the fences, so not worth doing. Love the cabbage trees and the look they give, but they're very susceptible to the slightest sniff of spray, so we're a bit careful about that. Taupatas do really well. Trying to get more kowhai, totara, things like that, and they need a little bit of shelter to do well. So the exposed parts, we have had to replant a few times here. Certainly achiacs, coprosmas, the pittosporums do well, but things like totara, kowhai, we just make sure they're in a more sheltered spot now. We've lost a lot over the years. The big thing is looking after for the first 2.5 years, but it is actually quite pleasant. I can hear the birds out here, I can hear the stream, and to potter away hand releasing, it's better than being in a hot gym, isn't it?
So we'll have a look at your 8-year-old planting here.
Michael Smith from the Council's Riparian Management Office facilitates environmental plans tailored for each farm.
Well, that's right. I mean, this is really wouldn't be a good grazing land, would it?
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah. So we have a meeting with a dairy farmer, and we discuss what we're going to do. We talk about mapping the streams and looking at them, and then we get an aerial photograph of the farm. We've got a 1 to 50,000 topographical map, and we go out on the farm, wander around, and mark where the farmer wants to plant. And we use our knowledge, and we talk about where the fences could go due to obviously erosion and best management systems for the grass. And if it's on a really steep slope and it's eroding away, we can say, well, let's retire that and put it in vegetation, protect the rest of the paddock, and you probably gain more than you're gaining from currently grazing the eroding bank. And then we use our map and use the 2 zones. One's the flooding zone, the C zone, which we put our flax toi, and then we go to our B zone where we put our tree species. So we use a map and we break it down into small sections for the farmer. So we go with we put around about 300 plants per section, and so we'll set them up on the map, and we'll go, here's 300 plants, so it's about a year's work for an average farmer.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.